States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I had a Canadian friend who, at the end of the second period of the women's gold medal, sent me an email, and I told him there's 3 periods in every hockey game. So anyway, the last couple, he stopped emailing or texting me. Okay, could we have a look at approval of the agenda? Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Barb?
Support.
Nick? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then we will go to recognition of visitors and people, hearing of people present.
Just one tonight, Dana Odell.
Okay.
I don't have a big long thing prepared tonight. I didn't have time to write anything, but same as recently, just continue to ask the board for more oversight into AI and implementation around that. I think that there needs to be policies concerning that, as well as a serious look at the long-term damaging effects that it can have. As I've said before, very new area, and there's data coming out every day just showing how detrimental it can be. So I think similar to whatever that stuff that was in insulation years ago that they've, since discovered causes cancer and stuff. That was AI back then. This is, that now, and it's only a matter of time before people realize the damaging effects it has. So we just asked the board to look into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, now we'll get into the discussion items, and the first thing on our agenda is Sex Education Advisory Board updates.
Yes, Emily, would you like to join me?
Yeah, sure.
Who's joining? You got a chair here. Emily Brechting is going to join me. She is the co-chair of the Sex Ed Advisory Board. And so she's going to join us here for update and presentation this evening. So as you can see from your packet, there are several pieces that we want to address, but we're going to start maybe. We're going to start with a membership update. So within your packet, let's just go from there, I guess, because the screen may cooperate or it may not. As you can see, this is our current membership list. There are 3 members that I've noted here. Their term actually ends this spring, and so we want to prepare for any changes. At our last meeting, one of our members, Joe Amaral, expressed interest in a second term, which is allowable by our Sex Ed Advisory Board bylaws, Article G, which was attached in your packet as well. Just wanted to be really transparent about that language and where that came from. And the Sex Ed Advisory Board was comfortable with pursuing that idea of a second term. Certainly no formal recommendation because we need to fill 2 other positions, and so then I've outlined next for you really the process that we'll undergo to gather those additional 2 members. So this is a process that's been utilized for the last few years, but just wanted to put it back in front of you. Instead of re-administering the MDE parent survey, because we just did that in March of 2025, we will proceed with using the data from last year. We had 1,108 parent responses, and then 43 applicants actually who applied to join Sex Ed Advisory Board. 6 members were taken from that application pool, if you will, and so we feel like there is a good representation still within there who may be interested in pursuing a role on the Sex Ed Advisory Board. So we'll proceed with the selection process the week of April 13th. The rubric is linked there for your information. Again, just a reminder, this is the process we've used over the last few years. And then the week of April 20th, we'll notify and receive commitment from the applicants. We'll have formal approval processes then, first with Sex Ed Advisory Board on May 12th for meeting, discussion, and formal recommendation. At that time then would come likely the formal recommendation of Joe Amaral entering into a second term is how we would anticipate that would flow. And then we would discuss at the May 18th work session and answer any questions that you may have as a board about the process.
Dr. Hooper, you served on this board years ago. Do you remember, would you like to go back and join the sex advisory board?
I don't know if you ever done
No. You did.
Good experience.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Do you need to replace a pastor with a pastor, or because you already have clergy, are you all set?
we already have clergy, so we're all set.
So it can be any?
It can be any. We try to find representation that is from every building, every grade
Right.
level, all
Right.
of those pieces. But certainly some of those required positions, because we filled last spring with an additional clergy, we should be good to go.
Good.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, moving to the next item, so seventh grade health recommendation. This comes to you as part of a process, that really started, the rationale is linked here. So the Sex Ed Advisory Board reviewed the fall 2023 youth assessment survey data, and really out of that review became a request for our health teacher teams to dig into current instruction around three topics that data points were of concern. One is human trafficking, dating, relationship violence, and then sexting. So our teams met in December to dig into, remind ourselves what the data points were, to discuss what we currently teach within those topics, and then the middle school in particular, so our seventh grade health, they really recommended a minor change to one assessment and one parent-student assignment based on that review. And then the Sex Ed Advisory Board unanimously approved the seventh grade health curriculum resource changes for recommendation to all of you at the January 13, 2026 Sex Ed Advisory Board meeting. And then from a high school perspective, we have a few new staff on that team. We also had the Ottawa Area ISD consultant working with us that day and trying to figure out what resources do exist in those areas that they may want to consider. But it was also an opportunity to really acknowledge kind of the onboarding process for those teachers with explicit understanding of the curriculum and how all of that works with regard to any changes. And so they're digging into some of that now, and we anticipate some recommendations in the next 6 months from that team. So, that's kind of the process. So the items linked here are, the items in black are current resources. So for example, off to the right, potentially risky situations. You can see that sexting is covered within the curriculum that was approved a few years ago. So sending or receiving inappropriate photos by phone, quote unquote sexting or internet, that is a topic that is covered within instruction. But really in red, what they would like to do is select all potentially risky situations, the second little bullet point down, sending or receiving inappropriate photos. So just to be able to document whether students can classify that as risky behavior based on an assessment. And then the second layer, you may recall the parent interview, that was a big piece of value that the team felt, gosh, through the years, but certainly back when we were making the shift in the recommendation to really enhance that parent-student conversation around these topics. And so they are really recommending adding the question about sexting. Again, on the left is already the activity that was included within the curriculum, but then recommending adding a question about sexting, and you'll see it represented here. What are behaviors that are unsafe for me when it comes to technology? So that opportunity for parents to talk with their students about that, and then what boundaries or parameters are set in place to help protect me. And so just opening up those lines of communication. Any questions about those recommendations? The seventh grade health team felt like the content that was covered in the area of, let me go back, in the area of dating, relationship violence, and sexting was good. There is content within the instruction over the 14 to 15 days of lessons that cover healthy relationships and characteristics of healthy relationships, and as well as then the sexting. The area that really the entire team, seventh grade as well as our ninth grade team who were in the room in December, they really felt like that human trafficking, really could be better placed, well placed in ninth grade. I think that there was some conversation around, could that be in seventh grade? I think that, a place to start, they felt like was in ninth grade, because we're also seeking resources and working with the ISD to, see what those resources might be. And so I think that that's a place to start, but certainly that's something that we can continue to consider and navigate with our sex ed advisory board as well.
Do we have anything in middle school about human trafficking? Are there topics at all that have been addressed at all?
Not within our health unit, no, not at this time. And really what we found in our conversation with our consultant from the ISD, this is a newer topic, and so, we anticipate that additional resources will continue to be developed through Michigan Model, and some of those resources may become available as we explore a potential curriculum review in the next year or two.
You know, Nick, in fact, I just talked with Amy about this prior to the meeting. A couple weeks ago, someone I know gave me this, booklet on this. Emily, have you ever seen this group before? Anyway, they've been around for several years, and they're working with different schools. They're in Byron Center right now. And I told Amy that I would send her the information for this. I'll also send it to you, Emily. But I think that it looks like it's a real problem in our area. And, there may be some help here that we wouldn't have to, started from scratch, but
Sure.
they may be able to help us there. But I remember I went to, about 5 years ago, someone invited me to go to a weekend forum on this, and I could not believe the stuff that was going on in West Michigan. This was 5 or 6 years ago. And so I think it's probably affecting, it could be affecting a lot of our kids, and it's scary.
It's very scary. Whitewood Place has a video out on human trafficking, and my students watch it because Grand Rapids was, this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, Grand Rapids was the #1 city in Michigan.
Yeah, that's what they
human
said.
trafficking. It's such a problem that all healthcare providers have to have human trafficking training every 2 years for license renewal. It is a huge, I think Michigan is one of the top 10 states for human trafficking. It's a significant problem in Michigan.
I feel like, yeah, you all have access to all the data, and I totally, trust your conversations, just make, middle school, they're going to the mall in groups, and, for the first time, like, ninth grade seems maybe a little late to be addressing it, but
Yeah.
you guys keep talking about it, sounds like.
You're reminding me, one big caveat to that, conversation when we were with the teachers was the idea that they talk about, making, it's all about risky behaviors, right? And so, not sharing your name with someone online, and so some of those safe behaviors are addressed without calling it human trafficking, and some of the other realities to the other side of that coin. So that was a part of the conversation, that is covered within, but not human trafficking as it's labeled, and maybe that other side of it. So some of those risky behaviors and things to not do, sharing your name, sharing your location, meeting strangers in public, some of those components really falls even under those healthy relationships, as well as, safe technology decisions.
Nick, I would say too that I also kind of had the same reaction of, well, if this is good information to have when you're a ninth grader, why not have this as a seventh grader? And I think that it is likely as the curriculum develops and the resources and really fine tuning that, because I think it's important too that we educate but not terrify. And there can be, particularly with human trafficking, a lot of like fear base that isn't necessarily helpful in making good decisions. And so I think particularly with the update that we do anticipate coming in the next 18 months, if I'm remembering the calendar of all this, that I think that is gonna definitely come down. But again, like Amy said, a lot of the conversation is about like safety awareness and like not engaging in risky behaviors and helping really totally developed brains recognize that things that seem okay are probably pretty risky. So, yeah.
Totally get it. As you were saying, risky behaviors, and that's a lot safer word for
Yeah.
6th, 7th, and 8th graders, maybe,
Yeah.
Certain kids, cause yeah, you can scare them severely quickly, and then you've
Yeah.
got some anxiety issues to deal with, but.
I think that this certainly opens up the opportunity for parents also to be having those conversations. Unsafe for me when it comes to technology, again, reiterating some of those points that we were talking about, that could lead to trafficking or meeting strangers, yes, so. Baby steps and looking forward to additional conversation about those topics as we move forward. Any other questions?
Amy, is that the end of the presentation? Okay, I just have a question to ask. I was looking at the notes from the May 13th meeting last year, and it said that the youth assessment survey that we get, that the county had reached out and said that they were gonna eliminate 2 questions. Do you remember why they eliminated? They said each of these questions involve gender identity. Can you tell me what the reason for eliminating those 2 questions was?
Feel free to jump in, I know Dr. Vanderjack.
So there was a lot of
follow-up
controversy
questions.
behind, what survey questions you could ask without getting federal government oversight.
Okay.
So the decision of the group that made this, that creates the survey from Ottawa County, from health department to other professionals in Ottawa County said, we're just not gonna ask those
Okay.
questions. The volume of participants that were asking those questions, we thought was beneficial, because if you wanna opt out, you can opt out, but let's ask the questions to get the data. They said, we're not gonna ask questions anymore. I think there's one still left, and the rest are, they removed them. So it was not our choice to remove them or choose to take them or not. The people that administer the survey chose to take them.
Interesting that you asked that, because I was actually just looking at that before I came tonight, because the students, the percentage approximately of students that are represented in that minority of answering that question tallies to be about 16%. And I had some concern about us not asking that question, because I think 16% of our student body is a pretty big percentage. In fact, I reached out to the athletic director and the secretary of high school, and 16% is twice of the number of athletes we have in our football program. And so I can't imagine Hudsonville would want to totally ignore our football program times 2, but by that federal oversight, that's what unfortunately has happened by not asking.
We had planned on it, because then we get longitudinal data on it, but, doesn't exist, so it's not true.
It was asked, I believe, for the first time in 2023, and then in our administration this fall, they were removed, so.
And we had talked about it as a board about, do we ask the
Right,
question? We're like,
so
you can always
that's,
opt out,
okay.
but the board, we can include them, and I think it would have given us, it doesn't hurt to have more data.
Mhm.
The changes are clearly have to go through the board still, but giving data can at least inform you what your kids are saying. That's the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet, yeah, thanks.
Wait, hold on, anything else?
No,
Okay,
thank you. Thank you. And our next item that we have on the school bank here. Okay, let's see, the clock, public announcement and clock purchase recommendation.
Thank you, Rick. Sure. Thank you. So the documents in the packet, the recommendation and the bid tab are kind of the end of a long process. I mean, we have been replacing clocks and PAs with the new messaging type clock since, well, with this bond issue. I want to recognize Chris Mauser sitting behind Mr. Anderson. He works with CBD, our tech consultant, and he and our technology director, Jeff Smucker, have put hours, well, days, I don't say a week, but they put a ton of time into walking the buildings and looking at every spot where a clock is needed, trying to get, so we don't have change orders after the fact, of, oh, I wanted one over here. Getting all that identified. And I believe they're really good work. If you notice in the bid tab, we've got a much tighter range we normally have for this kind of work. So applaud them for that great work. This really fills in the rest of the district. And the rest of the district is a lot of the district, but it's the rest of the district. And the way, Jeff has really, what would I say, engineered, landed, or just his design for this was to do clocks, in a similar time they did the PA work, because there's speaker work involved, things like that. And so there's wiring involved. And we're doing Allward, Georgetown, Jamestown Lower, Jamestown Upper, Baldwin Middle, Riley Middle, the ECC, a few here at the, admin building. You know, if there's an event, or just, we need to have some of those here, and, a couple in the transportation facility. So it covers a lot of territory. And just virtually the same scope for clocks and PAs in those buildings. A lot of the PA systems we're replacing, we can't get parts for, we haven't been able to get parts for. We're using used parts, say, rig parts, just making parts. So our PA systems really do, need help. And then some of that is real similar with the clocks in these buildings too. So they don't owe us anything. And, just thanks everybody for, dealing with the old systems and getting us through. If you could turn to the bid tab, we are recommending that we don't take in the low voltage cabling category. We're recommending we don't take the low bidder there. We talked to low bidder Beist, or we're recommending we take Town and Country, because the savings, of $39,000, while that's significant for something like this, it's nearly $1 million project. We would, when it comes to certification, testing, and those things of that nature, it's really hard to get, it's hard to get vendors to be this closely together in this space. So our recommendation is to go with Town and Country for the wiring, for the public address system, and for the clocks and timers, for a total of just under $1 million, $997,048. And like I said, I can't thank, Chris and Jeff enough for their work. Town and Country, as a vendor, has done a lot of electrical work, just they've had some of our building electrical packages. They haven't done this work for us in the past. We spent a long time talking about that. They've done it in other places, but we feel they can put a service in one of our buildings, they can clock it. So, we feel they're very qualified, and the same thing with, public address, so. That is the summary of what I have to say. Are there any questions?
Pat, who did this? Who did the work, similar work like this for us before?
Moss has done a lot of it.
Okay.
They haven't done all of it, because there's sometimes, but I'd say the lion's share has been done by Moss, and they've done good work. And you can see their pricing here is not that far off, in the PA, in the clock area. More in the clock area, but they're pretty close in the PA, for the PA package. So we feel like we do have a good, when you get a range like this, we do have a pretty good, feel that we're getting good pricing. And Chris and Jeff went over and over and over with the vendor, and you can see there's some deducts in here where they might have had too many speakers, or there's one case when they included in their bid, patch cables that they don't need, we're gonna supply, we wanna buy, our tech department wants to buy their own cables for the cabinet, so, yeah, it's, I think we've got a good plan, a good project, and we would like to, go with Town and Country, for the wiring, as well as the categories where they're low.
you recall, this is a very deep conversation about another security measure with PA systems that can be obviously housed in the building, but consistent at work, and you could do, quite frankly, you could do 3 buildings at a time, you could do a shelter, you could do different communications if needed to be in classrooms, off-site and so forth to each other.
We can push messages to these clocks, they just don't have to say time. We can
Yeah, they're all
message to
LED
these
and-
clocks.
Is there a building that has the public address and clock system in place that we want everywhere in the district? Is there a current building that has?
That's what we
this in
started with
place?
at the 5-6 building.
So 5-6 has
Tested it
it.
out, and we liked it.
So this project will bring everybody up to the same level as 5-6.
And since then, we've done Park and the high school.
High school, Forest Grove.
So everybody comes.
We started with Forest Grove after the 5-6 as I guess a smaller undertaking, see how that would work, and it still falls in the scope of the bond.
More bond funds, and what's the timeline, like, as soon as we can?
We wanna get it done, they'll do most of the work in the summer. They'll get into some of the buildings before that, but we want,
In the evening, they do.
we wanna have it done, most of it done before we come back to school.
Any risks or concerns that you have with this project?
No, Town and Country, as you said, has been great. Coordination is a big part of this.
Yeah.
Getting the cabling in, getting everything set, prepped, and that's why they've been a good company to work with.
In the conversation with Town and Country, they had concerns about tariffs, and we've helped a lot of vendors through that with, just uncertainty of tariffs in the future, up or down in bids. And, we told them, we've got the bond funds in the bank. We order your stuff early, you don't have to wait until the summer, cause that's what they're worried about. We don't wanna order this before that, so buy it. We call it stored materials, we can certify that they have it in either their facility or they can store it in one of ours. And that's gonna save them, and, it takes that uncertainty out of their bid, so that helped a lot.
All the components are probably going from China, right? I mean,
Cabling's actually pretty local,
Is
in
it?
the other parts, yeah. A lot of people have moved a lot of parts over the US.
Thanks.
Now, will this be coming to us then for a vote at the next meeting?
Yep.
Mark, yes.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thanks, Pat, thanks, Chris. Okay, let's see, next we're going on to the, trip request.
So next, this coming spring, Women's Water Polo starts their season, their annual trip to Ella Stevenson for a Midwest water polo tournament at the end of April. The third week of April, couple weeks after spring break. It's an overnight out-of-state request, so we asked the board to approve it, at the next board meeting. They've done this for years. So, similar request was in the past.
Next, we have the textbook curriculum recommendations.
Yeah, so first in your packet is, the advanced broadcast journalism resource, so that's a course that you approved.
Can you skip one?
I think we
Sorry.
might want to
Skip that number 4.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right, with tech, with another tech.
Ooh, thank you.
That was
Just
mine.
ready to go.
Huh?
No, that was, yeah.
You're halfway done with the
See,
Number 4.
Go ahead.
technology equipment purchase recommendations.
Thank you. So there's a couple here, other tech, purchase recommendation that our, tech department led by Mr. Smucker coordinated with, our E-rate consultant. And our E-rate consultant helps us coordinate, it's a very specific set of rules that fits the Universal Service Fund program. And that's the, if you look, it says different things on your phone bills and cable bills, but this is the fee that goes into that national fund. And we get, roughly 50% for a district with our free and reduced lunch count. So, what we're recommending is, 9 Cisco network switches, 11 access points, and a wireless, controller. And this equipment is largely needed to, there's 8 UPS units. But this equipment is largely needed for the clock and PA work, mostly for the PA work. But it's just, we need more network switches, network ports. And what Jeff does is he goes, basically gets it for 50 cents on the dollar using E-rate dollars. So he leverages that. It's also, this is eligible for, we'll buy it out of the bond fund, then reimburse the bond fund. So, if it's approved. So, but he doesn't use, CBD for that. He uses a different consultant.
These going in different buildings or, like, kind of scattered?
Pretty much
Yeah.
these buildings. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The UPS units, there's a couple, I think we had one, we found last year that we had one failing at Riley.
Okay.
But we're also doing the clock and PA work at Riley.
Sure.
We would replace that anyways.
Right.
Well, it's hard to blame
Yep.
this on that, it needed it, so. But for the most part, we're adding capacity out there for the other project.
Gotcha.
Not bad. What's a UPS unit? I mean, I know the other stuff, but what's a UPS unit? Or do I have to send them up to this? I'm just
Uninterrupted-
really more just curious.
Uninterrupted power source,
Oh.
so it's battery backed
Yeah,
up.
okay, yep, okay.
And it just, when that, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry for the alphabet soup. I'm not supposed to do that.
I wanted to know.
I just thought it should be really.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thanks for asking that.
All right.
Good question.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, now we'll return to the agenda, and I will go to item 5, textbook curriculum recommendation. Amy?
Yes.
I'm the one who read the wrong thing, okay.
I thought I jumped in.
Okay, I can do it.
Getting too speedy, getting too speedy. So the first textbook or curriculum, update or request in your packet is for advanced broadcast journalism. That's a course that, was approved in December. And you can see that, it has 2 components. One is really a foundations course that we anticipate being able to utilize within our broadcast journalism 1 and 2 courses as well. So, because there's 4 educator licenses included in this request, that allows some foundations components, but then also specifically, you'll notice that there's 1 resource as an option listed, and that's specific to the video production aspects of connecting it to our video boards, both at the stadium as well as at the field house, and that's the specific resource that's used to do all of the training for students and all of the uploading of the programming and video that will be developed.
Any questions or comments?
The next item on the list is for our modern composition class for our 11th and 12th graders, and the book is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. You can see that this book, although it really talks to some of the habits of mind, which if any of you are familiar with Stephen Covey, very quality habits of mind there. But this book in particular has some connections specifically to some of the writing tasks that students will be asked to do within this course, and it elevates those opportunities with the content within this book. And so this is the request for this course at this time. Mike, is there anything you might like to add to that since you're in this room?
We're looking at just 2 class sets, and we have existing funding available from the Department of Purchasing.
Have we ever taught this before, like Covey, or not?
I think we use a Covey book within our leadership course, but
Okay.
it's not this Covey book.
I remember taking a couple-week seminar back in the 90s. Well, Stephen Covey was very popular back then.
It was.
Might have been his dad that's doing it then. not
His
son
dad?
that's taking it.
Oh, okay.
The son's very active with it now.
Well,
yeah, so.
That
So
was
Amy,
almost
oftentimes-
30 years ago.
Amy, oftentimes we'll see, multiple options, as you have in the next one, that are rated, and here each has one option. Just because not much more was available, or,
So with the DAC classroom in particular, because that resource is directly linked to our video boards and
Sure.
they'll be doing video productions, that one is
that one makes
specific
good
to that.
sense, yep.
I think Mike and I had that conversation around modern
We
composition.
wanted to find something that checked two boxes. One, the context for which we're training students to write in. We wanted to address those contexts, you know, the business world, teamwork, things like that.
Yep.
But also we needed something that dovetailed both the writing process, and 7 Habits was really the only option for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alright, and then the final textbook request is for our AP World History. This will be available for our 9th through 12th graders, and this is also a pretty straightforward, text that is used really across other AP, courses, as well as other districts. There was a lot of exploration around that, and looking for 2 sections of books, which is, around $10,000 at this time, along with some of those online resources that would help with online access, assessments, etc. And so that request is also, will be coming for formal approval at the next board meeting, but certainly open for questions and discussion now.
Any questions?
Not related to the books, but I've heard that there's been pretty good response to this course. So
Yeah, I spoke with the teacher as we were finalizing some of the cost structure in the last few weeks, and it sounds like there is quite a bit of interest, and I think the goal is to try to give upperclassmen the first swing at it, even though we know eventually 9th graders will be fully engaged as well, and so I'm not sure what that sweet spot will be for a combination of underclassmen as well as upperclassmen, while they still can take it, so.
that's why I heard about it. So my incoming freshman was like, I can't take it.
Oh,
Listen to it.
okay,
Oh, it's good.
yeah, I'm not sure what that
There's
balance will
interest.
look like.
My upperclassman really wants it, so.
Yeah, it's.
They're bigger than my guys.
For the next couple of years, we'll the high school will navigate that from a
Yeah,
scheduling
gotta work through the first few
perspective.
years of.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes so much sense.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? Or
I
comments?
took world history back in the 70s, and there's a lot more world history since then.
Yeah.
so-
It's a thicker textbook now,
That's right, there you go. Okay, let's see, next any other questions?
No.
Okay, we'll go on to, field house stage purchase recommendation.
Thank you. Our recommendation is to purchase, portable stage from, Corporate Live in Kentwood, Michigan for $50,518. This, and if it's approved, this is eligible for the bond fund under the FF&E furniture, fixtures, and equipment, category. It is, it's very similar to the portable stage we've used for the last 2 years for our graduation ceremony. It's not the same, but, Mr. Blair, our auditorium manager, I have to give him so much credit, because he has researched and researched and researched. And to comply with board policy, I said, Keith, we need more quotes. So, nothing wrong with the other stage, vendor solutions. Corporate Live works best for us. We also, it's the low bid. But we know how to, we can come pretty close to taking this, putting this together and taking it apart by ourselves. We'll have some help from the vendor. Owning our own stage system will save us money over time, but, it's the best reason to do it, is not only for those savings, but we can really, if we own it, we can get it set up and have it delivered when we want it. And literally every year, trying to find a stage, because it would really not be a good day, a good look for me if we didn't have that stage. So it's always been stressful getting it. And so we can use it for other things, but it really, whenever the people can help us set it up, we basically have to take the field house down, do it on their schedule. This will give us a lot more flexibility in that space, so.
Where will we store it?
Well, good question. We've got a number of spaces in that facility where we can put stage equipment.
Okay.
Our backup is to haul it out to the new storage facility we have built between there and the transportation facility, just right across from the tennis courts and the track across the field. But we're gonna get most of it, if not all of it, stored in the field house itself.
You know, we've talked about graduation there the last couple of years. We had the first graduation, make some adjustments, make sure. And then now we feel like we've got it down to what we want, what we need, and something that can be modular, so you can put it other locations to if needed for another stage, whether it's there or football field or other options too, to have it on site.
Yeah, great point. So we've taken the time to look at other things and other configurations for graduation and feel like, we got it right now.
How much did it cost for us to rent the stage?
With shipping, it's close to 10 every year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But that price was gonna go up. They were giving us quite a deal just for the people they were helping with setting it up. The one year we had to use we could pull it out of another school, just time to get it here. It was stressful.
How long do we anticipate it lasting for? I mean, we're using it a couple of times a year top. Should probably last a while, right?
Zach's got 4 years, right? So. 4-ish.
We've got other,
Yeah.
we've got other stage equipment that's 20 years old, and as long as the parts, everything has to be inspected and have maintenance on it, but I'd say it's got at least 10 years in it.
It's not heavy, it's not used daily, but.
That's what I'm saying,
We have some furniture in our buildings that have been there since you were in school, right?
We talked about it at the last
We
meeting.
did.
Pat, is there any liability, if we're owning it and we're setting it up versus they're owning it and they're setting it up, is there any liability concerns, insurance concerns, we talked about?
I mean, there always is, but we have other, like wheel portables, really the choir risers that go into the auditorium. There's a lot more, well, we've got in other areas. In this, when they put this all together, it is really locked down, lashed with straps. This is heavy stuff. It can hold far more than the pounds per square inch we put on it.
Sure. What I hear you saying is that we're setting it up now.
Yeah, we are still gonna use the assistance of the vendor seller. Corporate Lives helped us for a couple of years.
Okay.
Do it, but they'll tell us how to do it, but our people, our custodial maintenance staff, they set up stages all the time.
Right.
We'll confirm with our insurance carrier just to make sure that what we get is
Yeah.
meets our code and expectations. I think it's
And then it'll be
It'll be
sinking
covered.
fund or
It'll be covered.
out of operation?
fine.
Oh, bond, okay, all right.
How many schools have their own setup as opposed to renting out?
Can I, before you answer,
Oh.
how many schools actually have graduation on site? Might be a better question.
So-
With all due respect,
Okay.
I just don't know how many schools have it on site. Most of the larger schools, ones I know of, Granville, Rockford, Zeeland, Barnes, they don't have it on site. So it's hard to, when you rent out a facility, a lot of times you're at the mercy of their equipment.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you're getting there, but there could be schools that ask us to rent our stage.
That's
So if
what-
that's where you're going.
Yeah.
We'll probably have to make sure it works for us before
Right.
we start.
Okay.
But we could probably,
Pay
we could
for
rent
it.
it out for $45,000 a year.
Yeah, there you go.
$8 grand, yeah, $8 grand.
Are we gonna have, will we have it in time for this year?
Depends on how our board meeting goes, when we ask for. Sorry.
Okay.
We hope so, it's gonna be, that's
If
why.
on March 12th, we approve it.
That's
we'll
right.
have it.
We're
That's
not
what we're
working on it,
capable
we'll
of.
sit off
We
the
should.
side first year just to be safe.
We should.
Now, I do remember the first year, which I missed, that we were at the new building there. The board was having this much room behind them and your chairs. So I think it was much better set up last year when the board wasn't on the stage.
We were on camera the whole time, I'd be on my best
That's
behavior.
been 2 hours. Okay.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Amy? Okay. Let's see, then we'll go to, the SOAR 6 focus group findings, and Robin sent those out, I don't know if people saw them, she put them out.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Oh, you did?
share
Oh,
them
you got 'em
here,
okay,
here,
good,
but you also
excellent.
have a copy, cause I'm gonna go through this fairly quickly.
Sure.
So take it with you, take a double look at it if you have questions. This is not something we'll be asking for approval, I just wanna bring the board back saying, the whole intent of the focus groups is to hear from individual parents, staff members, community leaders and students about some topics that we wanna make sure are on our radar. We have 7 board members that probably know, got a great pulse on the community, but other topics that we might be not thinking of. So the findings of the focus group do not drive our strategic plan, but the findings of the focus groups drive the surveys that we ask to get feedback from the general public. So if one person feels strongly about something, we don't change what we do. But we want to get that understanding from a greater population and say, okay, is it what more people feel like? Is there a vast majority or enough that we want to make it part of our strategic plan? So I'm gonna go through just the overarching comments that were made. There's a lot of information here for you to review. So I'll start with, these are the focus groups. We have parents, staff, and students. You can see 111 parents from all the buildings. We have 33 staff from all the grade levels. We had 27 students that were juniors and seniors that got to eat donuts when I met with them. Oops. Hold on, I might have that one up here. Just. Nope. No. Skin. So these are the driving questions. What are some things that we do well? What are some things that we can improve? And what are some things that you have maybe in concern in education, not necessarily in Hudsonville, for the future of what education will look like? So again, I met with parents. There were several focus groups of parents. There was a focus group with community leaders. I had a focus group with students, and then I had 2 focus groups with staff. All the parent focus groups are brought together. Same thing with the community leaders, you'll see them on here, the students brought together and so forth. So when you talk to the parents, some of their comments about the strong academics, high expectations. Normally, the number one thing that came out of every focus group, and Pat attended, I think almost all, a couple of you had conflicts, but talked about our teachers. And it wasn't just teachers, it was staff. They were truly about, they talked about individual principals that know the kids' names, they talked about transportation, bus drivers, they talked about custodians, how the kids love the custodian, they just talked about staff. It's really the highlight of what happens. Outstanding special ed program, if you look at the bottom, it talks about mental health supports, TBIS, you see more of a specific outline. We're talking about kind of the culture, opportunity, and community part, about strong TBIS. Parents talked about how their kids recite some of the stuff at home, about owning things. They asked parents, you gotta own that, mom, that kind of stuff. It was interesting to listen to. They talked about music programs. We got a lot of positive feedback on the requirement of 6th grade music. There's a little bit of a challenge of music, and you'll see that a little bit later, about some kids are not making the choice in joining 2 musics, which limits some elective opportunities. So if you're if you have the opportunity as a 6th grader to be in orchestra, and you want to also be in choir as a 7th grader, they want to do both of them, which limits some of their electives. So they want more electives, they can do more music, which is interesting. I thought that was great. It's a good problem to have, and they even brought that up. It's a good problem to have. We talked about the pride of our district, and one of the parents said, just being asked to be a part of these focus groups. They were randomly selected parents. A couple of them, I would know a couple of them because of name, but most of them were people I had never met before. Our tech department does a great job randomly selecting people. Then Robin sends out invitations, and they come through and say, yes, I'd like to partake or not. Inevitably, we'll have 25 to 30 that will say, I will be there, and probably about 70% show up because of things that conflicts and so forth. But we have plenty to have great dialogue, conversations. They, just to let you know, they're scheduled for about an hour and a half. I tell them it's gonna be about an hour and 15 minutes, and they usually last close to 2 hours, because we have great dialogue and conversation. So there's some other, some of the positives. Some of the challenges from the parent focus groups, from a transportation logistics, it always comes up about double runs, number of bus drivers, those are challenges, things that we wanna explore and get more information on. The sidewalk safety at the 5-6 building came up in a couple focus groups. I know we're gonna talk about that in a little bit when we talk about potential bond. But those are some other, some of the challenges. You have open houses and in-event logistics. If you have a kid in 4 different levels, from Jamestown, Lower, Upper, Riley, and the high school, sometimes open houses or parent-teacher conferences is just a lot to navigate when your kids are all over the district. So, talked about some of those. Communication and clarity. Inevitably, there's positive feedback on communication, and then there's people that, when you come to the challenges, they talk about communication. So I think that's something we can always work to improve, and we'll talk a little bit about communication, talk about bond too, what that looks like.
What's the issue with parking at Bauer?
So there's never enough, and we added more parking, and it's still, when you have a large event, there's still, and 48th is a high traffic area. Same thing, they love the parking at Park, but when there's an event, it's a lot of people there. I think the biggest issue came up with parking was at Jamestown Upper, because you have Riley right there, and if they have an event at the same time, you're parking kind of, probably in your driveway. That's how far you can probably get. I mean, it's a lot of cars down there. Talking about the growth of the district, one of the biggest conversations we had this with staff and with parents, was about affordability. So we talked about that. We've talked with city members. I know a lot of you have heard about the affordability of houses. It's not just our houses moving, it's can people afford houses in the area, go from there. And then talk about the events and community education across both sides. There's always a question about, we always have events, but a lot of the community ed events are still at Baldwin, or they're on the campus of the Baldwin campus. And if you live on the south side near Forest Grove, for example, it's not a 5-minute drive to get to the north end. So talking about community events, not just facilities, how do we work on time? So instead of starting at 3 o'clock, you start at 3:15, so that we can make it there, getting out of school, those kind of things.
They ask about, or did they talk about like the holiday programs? Would that fit into that category? I just remember that there was one, I was going to Meyer right before Christmas, and there was like, everybody from Jamestown was.
Going to Fairhaven?
Yeah.
Or Fellowship? You know, they didn't, I don't think it came up
They're all
because,
gonna be late.
I don't think it came up, and it didn't come up this time, I've heard it before, but I think because the time. If it starts right after school, that's the issue. If you know it starts at 7 PM or 6 PM, and you can get there an hour early, I think, yes, there's the traffic there, but it was more of a time scheduling versus always driving up there. The athletic question came up more with always having to drive to the Baldwin campus versus the holiday program.
Yeah.
Good question.
And not to get off the rails here, but just, our field house is probably too booked up with athletic events at certain times of year to have all of the programming at the field house than at local churches.
I don't
guess.
think that's out of the question. I don't know if the acoustics are designed for those kind of I understand they're elementary concerts, but there are a lot of events. I do know we're having, I guess we'll find out in the spring, because we're having our orchestra celebration in the spring in the field house.
Well, Nick, we're gonna have a 750-seat auditorium one day. Maybe you guys can get there first. Maybe Grace can get there before Jamestown.
Oh, man.
Then we'll have a place.
There you go.
But what is the housing, like, help me understand how there's a growth opportunity around housing market affordability for us?
The question is the growth of the district, the understanding, is it growing in areas we expect it to grow because of the affordability of housing?
Okay.
So you can say Jamestown is building and building and building. Are there houses that are affordable for families that are starting new family with littles? We're finding more and more that they're affordable for people that come in if you have a high school student versus a 2-year-old. Some of the, let's see, no, some of the academic, some of the things that we talked about, expansion of gifted and talented, we've talked about in the past, but want to talk more about that. The ASL at the high school, so that's the learning centers, the keyboard and technology skills. Do kids learn how to type? When do they learn how to type? Those are questions that we might want to explore more. And then there's not just a balance of screen time at younger age, but there's an understanding of screen time. It's funny, interesting, you listen to the parents who are like, it's hard, my kid comes home, they're on that screen all the time, and we're like, you've been on the screen all day at school, and they're like, no, we haven't. And the parents are like, oh yeah, you have. Then I asked the teachers, and I said, what percent of the day are your kids on their devices? And I said, how many of you are 50% or more they're on the devices? Nobody raised their hand. They said it's less than 10% they're on the device in the classroom. But if you don't know that, as a parent, you think my kid is one-to-one, therefore they must be on this all day long. And so there's an education and a communication process here to talk about. And maybe it's more on the teachers then to communicate that with their parents about, here's our expectation, here's how much time we truly are on the devices in class. I think those that volunteer in buildings, from watchdogs and so forth, they see it differently and be like, oh yeah, because there was a couple parents in that, they're like, I've been there, they are not on their devices all day. So it's good sport. Student culture, and one of the, you're concerned about bullying as always, but there's also, parents talked about that, well, there was a couple parents that were adamant about, it is so much better than it used to be. They appreciate the work that's being done. And so everybody has experiences, and some people say it's better, some people say it's impacting me, so everybody has that experience. I don't think it's something that will go away, but it's something we need to continue to talk about. A lot of conversations from parents regarding even teacher burnout. Could be from things they've read, seen, heard, but then a lot of it has to do especially with special education. And then we talked about the broader concerns for the future. What does AI look like? Balancing with creativity. Some of those things. I talked about student well-being, mental health supports, and what does that look like? And then some of the challenging landscape with state funding, political influence on schools. What does that look like? So those are some of the broader topics that were discussed, and just the future of education. I can tell you this, 3 years ago when we had these, AI was not a conversation that we had at all, so now it's a conversation I think we need to dive deeper into. And seek feedback from what are concerns moving forward. Met with a high school student focus group, what's working, what needs attention. So you can see from a student standpoint, it's always hard when you have high school juniors and seniors and the superintendents in there, having conversations. You just gotta get them to start talking. When they start talking, then they keep talking, which is kind of fun. But talked about they like the wide variety of classes, they like the career connections, but one of the, if you look under improvement, there's also talking about, can we get more field trips and get out to see more businesses? And so Amy and Chad Seitzman have doing tremendous work about increasing that, but have those conversations. They really like how their teachers build relationships with kids. They also talked about the quality teachers. You can see some of the improvements. Even though I brought donuts, still school lunch quality and options came up from the students about talking about friends in other districts, what they get, and what they can order, and how they do things. Go from there. A couple of kids did talk about furniture, AC. They say inconsistent because they go from the south campus to the north campus through the connector, and there are different climates, not just temperatures, as they walk through that building. It was interesting, the turf conversation, the high school students, they said, we need the turf at the lacrosse field, or the field that the band uses, needs to be replaced. And that's newer than the field at Baldwin, but the field at the high school is used a lot. The band's on it, we have multiple sports teams on it. There are kids out there during class doing things, where at Baldwin it's used for women's field hockey and men's football. So it's not used near as much, so it's lived longer, but I'd rather use it all the time and replace it than not use it and go from there. So they brought that up, and I wanted clarification, because I thought they were gonna talk about Baldwin, and they're like, no, that's fine. It's the one here. Okay, so good conversation. And then their concerns about the classroom also have to do with artificial intelligence, and the future of learning. That was their, they don't wanna lose the creativity, and if you talk to kids, even if they're giving access to things, it doesn't mean they always use them. It's kind of like I'll say a cell phone. Cell phone is 100% all AI, right? So if you use it, that's up to you. If you want to use it wisely, go from there. So the kids should talk about that. The staff focus group, excuse me. Talking with the staff members, again, these were two different groups, but find their information together. Talked about the strong, talk about what we do well. They do feel valued, supported, they have strong relationships with the families, they feel like a close-knit family actually in their building. They celebrate student success well under support systems. They have a wide variety of athletics and extracurricular activities. It's not just athletics, there's so many opportunities for kids and clubs and so forth, so opportunities for students. We talk about what areas of growth and future considerations when talking with staff. They talk about the increase in EL population, which we talked about before, and the number of students that are coming in from maybe that are not proficient in English. They talk about paraprofessional support and what that looks like, and training and support. I know we've talked a little bit about that as a board, and gifted and talented clarity and expansion. Under facilities, they talk about aging buildings, classroom updates, air conditioning, interior security, those type of things. There's a little bit of a conversation about the 5-6 building and their own entity. When we designed the 5-6 building, the intent was, let's not do things vastly different on different ends of the district, so if people want to leave from one end, go to the other. We kept things very similar. So 5th grade looks the same as 5th grade on the north, 6th grade looks the same, or on the south, same with 6th grade. Now that the building's been open for a number of years, do we start to have it be its own entity, live in its own world, as opposed to always trying to do the same that's happening. I think we can do a lot of things still in the building. So those are things I think we want to explore more, but that came up in the conversation with staff. Wellness and sustainability, again, equity amongst, one of the comments was equity across the north and south side with initiatives. And some of that has to do with the 5-6 building also. The future focused questions from staff, again, artificial intelligence, digital and media literacy. So it really comes down to what do you teach your kids when? As a school system, no matter what takes place, and it's our job to educate our kids. So what about digital literacy, about when they have access to what content and what devices and what that looks like? What will phones look like moving forward? That was right when we started to have discussions about the legislation, and then one-to-one technology balance. The community leader focus group, again, we had some of our business owners, clergy, people from the city, mayor. I mean, there's a bunch in the room. It was a great conversation. Strong, one of the things that we're really proud of, I would say, really strong reputation in the district. The last comment on the left, really, they were talking about grandparents actually relocate to this area, number one, to be with their kids, but because their kids have opportunities, so they want to be there to see them, whether it be on stage, on the field, in the pool, and so forth, and go from there. From a program and opportunities, the athletics, the arts, the extracurricular success, and really talked about how the bar is high, and we expect a lot from our kids, and I think they like that. And it's, whenever you raise the bar, it's like, oh, leadership and forward thinking, strong financial stewardship of bond dollars, strong local businesses, and connection with the community. Just some feedback that they provided during that time. And we talked about some growth opportunities, talked about a lot of CTE and skilled trade exposure, what that looks like. Try to increase that. Well, again, we talked about that a little bit. The bond with early childhood access, talked about not only more daycare and preschool options, but affordability, and what does that look like? There was somebody in the room that has littles and had concerns about how easy it is to get access to childcare and so forth within the system. There was also somebody that was actively with outdoor learning and discovery centers, which I know our team has been on a visit to Gentex with theirs, and talked about some outdoor discovery style programming. I know we've looked at that also from an internal cabinet about what can we embed in some of our buildings as it is. Collaboration and communication, again, improved communication, including use of AI. And then they also talked about housing availability concerns, from a financial standpoint, that's one of the bullets on there. I know I'm going fast, and I don't expect you to, but I just wanna reiterate, these are not driving our plan, but they're driving our question. So, just to kind of cut to the end, our next job is, as a team, to come back with, these are the questions we want to now ask. And so you'll see the new questions, what we're gonna cross off, and what we're gonna continue to ask. And then, but our job is to come up with the questions that address these if they're not already being asked on our survey. So these are the next steps. Based on the information that we have, look at some of we wanna make sure these things are really addressed, in our survey. Many of them are, some are new, that we'll wanna make sure we ask deeper questions. AI is a good example of that. We're also gonna wanna ask questions that may be more specific to some of the bond initiatives that we have, because, understanding about the furniture in your building probably is not a conversation families have at home. But if we can educate and ask at the same time, we'll gain some additional information, and the information be good information at this point. So that's a summary of hours of focus groups, but a great conversation with our community, and got a chance to have some good dialogue and some follow-up. I think I've talked a little bit, there were some questions about that a parent had, and I said, well, all right, sit down and talk more about it with you and maybe some of your neighbors that have similar questions. I'm gonna spend some time as a resident right here in town, having questions about BCC and what does that look like, and CTE and so forth. Open up some channels of conversation. Any questions?
Were there things that you came away from these sessions that will help us with the bond issue moving forward from the standpoint of information sharing, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing that I came away with, and Pat, jump in at any point, was everybody has a different opinion. And so the more we can spend time with people asking more questions and educating them, the perception that the last bond issue was all athletics, because people drive down 32nd and they see a field house, is just a false narrative, right? It was less than 30% of the last bond. And the next one's even less with athletics. So it's an education thing also. I think it's just communication. That was one thing that came out. Whenever you talk to people you talk to the community leaders, and they were so excited about an opportunity for CTE expansion here. And you talk to people that live in the city, and they're less excited about high school kids driving to an early childhood when they're used to their kids riding their bikes, like the bike bus that comes down Van Buren to Park Elementary from the library on Fridays in the fall, right? What does that look like when kids are going to, so that opens up a channel for conversation. It's really hard to, in focus groups, to get a sense of this is what people think. I know this is what some people think, but the question is then when you start asking questions to the masses, and you get 3 people that feel a certain way, and then you ask and you get 2,000 responses, and there's still only 3 people that feel that way, that puts it in context, right? So I think everybody has a valid point to how they feel, the way they feel. We just can't make decisions as a district based on, we need numbers, and if the numbers aren't there, then we need to ask either better questions or different questions.
Do we know how many of our students come from rental situations as opposed to living in a house that's been purchased and is paying property tax?
I do not know.
Okay, and I wonder
I
if
don't know how it would find out.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that's, what we could learn from that, because, when you're talking about property taxes, a lot of people, okay, I don't want this because of property taxes, but if you've got people that are renting, they're in a whole different ballgame.
We would say it's in the rent, they're paying they're indirectly paying property taxes. really.
You're a resident, you get to live, you get to still vote.
But even that renter, I mean, the owner's paying, is passing.
The owner.
Somebody's paying the property.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
one person instead of 600.
they don't get a tax bill
Yeah.
directly, but it's included in that.
Another thing that I liked on there was the fact that the business community seems to be, understanding how important the schools are. And, I know on some tax things you hear from the business community because they don't get, the tax break that those of us who own our own house is our first house. So, yeah, I just was wondering if there's any way we could leverage information to make sure that we talk, I mean, you mentioned the athletic things. I think that's very good, that we say, okay, when someone says that, we say, well, hold it. What percentage do you think we spent last time? And they say 50 or 60, we said less than 30. And this time it's only gonna be 22. Those are important.
From the focus groups, people really were, as much as we did to make it a really nice field house, they still were thinking it was, when Doug told them, we didn't have a place to get our kids together as high school students in one spot during the day. I mean, we had to do it specifically when kids were gone to tech center, so we could just get them in that former gym. Wow, so it was, he has a lot of opportunities to teach during that too, so.
Right.
That made a difference.
So we hope to, work on survey questions and get those to the board, next month.
Remind me when survey goes.
I'd like to administer it right after. People come back refreshed, rejuvenated, positive, still the same.
And I just thought of this, in our board briefs on Friday, we had I didn't realize that project on Baldwin was gonna be 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really?
And, yeah, and so,
The roundabout.
I mean, are there things that we need to do or can do?
No,
Good.
the biggest challenge is gonna be transportation. Getting in and out of some of the subdivisions. They're gonna road dye at Baldwin. They still have to get the water main around the corner at Baldwin and 48. When they do that, they're trying to at the same time put a roundabout in.
What are they gonna road dye?
Baldwin's going from 5 to 4, and then 4 to 3 after 40th, between 40th and
48?
48.
Well, they don't do it right by the entrance to our buildings.
They're not, but they're doing it by 40th. And then there's a challenge, the timing is not, let's just say we had a very intimate conversation at the township about the timing of everything, because we just can't say because we can get it off of 36th, that we can have 1,700
Yeah.
kids and parents navigate that intersection. And they try to equate it to Unity, with all due respect, but Unity has under 600 kids. That a lot of them still carpool together, some bus, but 600 or less than 600 is substantially different than 1,700 for the multiple campuses. So it was a good conversation. I think they've agreed to delay the actual entrance of that building to do that summer and have it be open. I was less concerned about what that looks like, quite frankly, on during football camp or during track, during any camps that they have on site. But we need it ready for school.
When's it supposed to start?
First thaw, not last week, but, first thaw, they can get it's really about the weight, getting the equipment on the roads. But there's 3 roundabouts in 48. There was a lot more to that update that I had a lot, but I thought that was enough. Roundabout at 48 and Bauer, a roundabout at 48 and Baldwin, and a roundabout at Bauer and 36th. in your, to your left, all around, they're all
Right-
about,
Right on my way.
teach your kids how to drive roundabouts, yeah.
Nice job with this, great process, you got it honed down to, you got it honed in very well.
It was good. So read through those times. If you have questions about, you want some clarification, we can talk about it next board meeting. Be more than happy to go through, and if you want context, sometimes that helps. Pat and I were there, we took a lot of notes. And Robin typed a lot of notes up for me, so thank you.
Okay, let's see, we have the fiber maintenance service recommendation.
Yes, another great, project run by our tech department, led by Mr. Smucker. A recommendation is to sign an agreement with Vice Electric for $78,770 for fiber line maintenance services. And we have a lot of things that, attack our fiber lines in Hudsonville. Sounds cute, I mean, lines are getting hit by cars, just a bump, a bad turn by a large vehicle. But, we have, just, you say it, squirrels attack our fiber lines. And, Vice does, I used to give him a hard time about writing this in there, but it's real. So Vice does this, we get 50% reimbursement. We've never spent up to the amount, this agreement amount is how much we're essentially approved by the Universal Service Fund. And then we get reimbursed back 50%. But he's got it scheduled out, and it's kind of this is how they recommend to do it. He's got a 50-hour block of time, straight time, overtime, time and a half, and then the materials in there to do it. But the recommendation is Vice does it so well, nobody chose to bid against them. And he runs this with our E-rate consultant, to help him versus, CDD, so. That's our recommendation.
When do we, I mean, it's not a lot of money, so it's not a huge deal, but when are we making decisions as to when fiber needs to be, we need fiber service, it needs to be upgraded, it needs to be refurbed, it needs to be, is that a regular sequence of?
This is mostly break fix. I mean, they do a little bit of preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
You know, if a line is sagging, you know, they'll replace it before it breaks, but it's really when we have failures.
Okay, so there's not like a PM schedule, it's when failures start to kind of
For the
build
most
up
part.
and you go, okay, we gotta get out here, Vice, come out and
They,
check out the lines. And
they
so-
do some of that.
Okay.
And they've got the money in this deal to do some replacements.
Okay.
But for the most part, this is,
Reactive to issues that are popping up. Okay.
Yeah, if we were to use all of our allocated time in that, would we be billed above the annual fee?
yes, we would pay it. You know, they're just a great vendor. We've got a couple of vendors like this in our district, but Vice usually tells us, when we call them, we see the problem, and they come and do the work, and they give us enough detail in their bill. I've never felt like, and I've used them, in other districts as well. They travel, so it's just, they're really good at fiber builds and fiber maintenance.
So what's the difference between having a contract like this and not having one? Because,
For the most part, the way Jeff has this structured, it's one of those things that we can use our E-rate allocation. It's one of those things they recommend us to spend it on this.
Okay.
If he didn't do it in this form, we couldn't get the reimbursement.
oh, I see, okay. So we're paying the same upfront, it's just how we're paying it.
It's pay as you go, pay as you use it.
Right.
But he does reimbursement forms when we use it to the Universal Service Fund.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thanks, Pat. Next we'll go on to the future bond scope.
So we talked about this at the lab, we had an additional work session after the board meeting. Robin sent you an updated,
I just posted it in the shared drive.
okay, so it's posted in the shared drive, is an updated PowerPoint or slide deck. Do you have all have access to that?
I don't, my computer just died.
What was that?
I turned mine off.
Does anybody have
Well, my
it?
battery's low.
Get that
Came right from work.
Sound like the kids, like the kids.
There's no outlets around here. I brought my charger.
Well, hey, that's why we need
Charger.
time.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not-
Yeah.
Let's
Charger.
not
You like a
turn
charger?
any other dude.
We always grab the chargers out of the thing, and plug them in the wall. We can get them.
You wanna throw it up there?
That's okay.
Got it.
I'm gonna go through and just update, when you get a chance to look at it, I'm
Yeah.
gonna read through it
Mhm.
and share. The only difference in the beginning is I crossed off January 26th, cause that's done. The timeline still remains the same, try to finalize the scope, February, we do have in March, we can finalize it then, if you want a chance to review this. You're not voting on anything,
Mhm.
we won't ask for really the board action until the April board meeting, so we have plenty of time. So I'd ask you to review, to talk about what we heard from the community is the same, and then I wanna talk about I still kept them in buckets, and I'm gonna explain the difference in the buckets right now. For the first bucket, the remodeling of ECC into a CTE building also includes administration offices. So that value went up, slightly, because we renovated, and added that to it. Mr. Dwight, can you share what Mr. Chansky said?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Those of us that aren't prepared.
No, I didn't mean that, I was just saying.
My battery's,
But you know, I mean, charging.
And then, the next bucket is the early elementary capacity, talks about, a building on the south side of the district, which truly is converting the Jamestown upper into a 5-6 building, initially, before then, a building can be erected, based on, volume of students. Right now, the capacity on the south side does not dictate that we would be able to, bond for that with the Department of Treasury, so this is a short-term solution to try to address the 5-6 building needs, and then go from there. So that, cost, dropped significantly down to just under 7 million. Go from there. The next bucket, the athletic improvement stays about the same. We do think we can make some adjustments to that number to fall within the scope of what we do, so that bucket, while it has the same number on it, all these numbers are still fluid, but they're getting closer and closer. I mean, the whole scope of this now falls within, capacity of what we can do, and go from there. So, and then the last bucket is the, district-wide infrastructure, elimination of the administration building off of that bucket reduces that 7 million and brings it down, within the scope. So, if you look at slide 7, it probably summarizes it best. It shows the different, I'll say buckets, and what the volume is. And that volume falls within the scope. Normally, when you're that far off, like we were when we met the first time, you're eliminating projects. I think we've addressed, several concerns by eliminating an actual physical administration building, but addressing the need for administration and community areas for professional development, and to upgrade the kind of the facade of our, district itself, but removing that and address the 5-6 building. We could address the 5-6 component, but also kept the structure from a curriculum standpoint, so we can have equal services on both sides of the district. And you can see the rest of the infrastructures there. Questions on 7 before we get to slide 8?
So far, you've done a great job. From where we started.
Slide 8, I think, is a very impactful slide. Slide 8 talks about what is being done in your, I'll say, kind of neck of the woods, what is taking place. And I think this speaks volumes of what that could look like. That I can put up. And the only reason the others, because we don't have final numbers on a lot of these things, so I just wanna be cognizant of that. I don't wanna get the cart ahead of the horse until we know truly what the scope would be. I'm gonna throw this up to talk about it, because I wanna walk through this with the board. Let me find that one. So, if we were to lean in this direction, there still could be decisions the board has to make about projects that could be eliminated or added. If you look at, and I'm just gonna go through each one, and I think they're pretty close. There could be, there's a lot, so if I miss something, and please don't, I guess I could put draft across this isn't decision making, but Allward would be get a refresh, air conditioned, playground, as well as furniture. Bauer, same thing, except additional sidewalks also by the Bauer campus. Georgetown, refresh, they already have the, geothermal, at Georgetown. But playground as well as furniture, and Park just got all the furniture, they would get, a little bit of a refresh, cause there's some exterior stuff we could still do, and some older areas, and they get the air conditioning. On the south side, you have Jamestown Lower, get the refresh playground. The additional structure, because at Jamestown Lower, if we were to do a 5-6 building at Upper, we need capacity of, we'd have to have like 4 classrooms, so that they would have enough capacity to be a K-4 building.
Say that one more time?
So if we turn Jamestown Upper into a 5-6
Yeah.
temporarily,
Yeah.
we'd have to add capacity to Jamestown Lower to make it a K-4 building, and then go from there. Good, okay, and then, furniture at Jamestown Lower, Jamestown Upper, we get a refresh, AC, there is AC at Lower, so Upper, we get AC, playground, converted to the 5-6, as well as furniture. Forest Grove, refresh, even though they have a brand new gym and parking lot, there's some areas that need to be refreshed at Forest Grove, air conditioned, playground and furniture. South would get, refresh, playground, they already have air, so they would get furniture also. On the Baldwin campus, you have the Baldwin Middle School AC, particularly the second floor. You get, and get a refresh. I missed furniture under Baldwin, so they definitely get furniture. All the things, I didn't put it for Riley either, I missed furniture on both Riley and Baldwin, but they both get furniture. 5-6, I added that to the Baldwin campus because of sidewalks, that's always been a major conversation with not only, Georgetown Township, but with us about how we can partner with them. Athletics, with the soccer field would be addressed, the stadium, would be addressed with locker rooms, in baseball, softball. And then the, additional early childhood center on the Baldwin campus. On the Riley campus, you have AC, a refresh, and furniture. Athletics, you have, turf field, out back, as well as in the track, and parking in that area to be used for multi, purposes, and it could very well be a lacrosse, new home to lacrosse, things like that. And then an early childhood center. On the high school campus, AC, refresh and furniture, athletics, fine arts would be an indoor facility. There'll be more of a multi-purpose, that would be the same thing as the field now, be used all day long, probably in the evenings. And then in the current EC, refresh, furniture, there's some areas that would need AC, but most of it has it, just because of the loads that are there. We would do CTE over at that building as well as administrative offices. So it gives you kind of a feel for where you live and the impact it might have on your either elementary school community, your greater K-8 school community, as well as from a district standpoint.
It's a very helpful visual. How many years would the bond be for? How many years does this go for?
So that's a really good question. And I'm gonna answer this the best I can. We would need to determine the scope of the projects and how long they would take. We have a certain amount of time to spend a certain amount of dollars once you bond them out. So for example, if you were to take it and you take the total sum and you divide it by 3, I think we do it in 3 series. You would say, okay, the first series is air conditioning, as an example. It costs X amount of dollars, you have to spend 80%, 75% of it, 85? 85% within 3 years, and then technology has a little bit different, component. So we can't bond 240, as an example, right off the bat, and say, now we have 3 years to spend it all, we don't have the capacity to do that, we don't have the workforce, we don't have all that. So we would do it probably in 3 series, and the 3 series would take, anywhere from, I would say, 3 to 5 years, but the second series might overlap a little bit with the first, so it's not gonna take 15 years, but it could take 8 to 10. That's a horrible way of answering the question, but it all depends on.
Just kind of like, cause I know we did the last one, we had all these series.
Yeah, we had 2 series on the last one, and we were able to do a larger component of the first because there were multiple sites.
Yeah.
We can do a little bit of that with air conditioning, but if we can't do anything with ECC until we have other ECCs.
Right.
There's a
It's
design
phenomenal.
component of that, so there's a, yeah, exactly.
When does the clock start running?
Once you sell the first box. So probably, if we are successful in November, probably about this time, next year, maybe beginning of February, probably. And it doesn't mean we don't start design ahead of time, because design is different than paying subcontractors to put shovels down. So truly our goal would be to try to get air conditioning addressed as soon as possible in the buildings that have the biggest impact, and then finish it up, similar to the clock conversation we had earlier. Getting those done to make sure they're what we want. We've had a lot of conversations about air conditioning in compressors versus units, ceiling units, cooling, location. It's an expensive component, but we also heard feedback from parents about it's not getting any cooler in August, and I don't know if it's the same temperature it was when I was a kid. I don't know. As I get older, it feels warmer.
You mentioned earlier tonight, the turf at the high school now is in worse shape than the football field. I've just always assumed, as we've been talking about this, like, that footprint changes, or would we like literally just encase what
No.
exists?
Yes and no. So we've talked a lot with athletics as well as our design team, trying to reduce the footprint, but still be able to have, I don't think it'd be in our best interest to have a 60-yard field, because then it truly is a practice facility for, even our band couldn't use the whole width of the field, or looking at women's flag football, starting that up and all the other. I think it would be nice to be able to also have competitions in there. But we don't think we need to have track competitions in there, so we'd get rid of the track. And we'd have some sort of a running surface as part of it, whether it's 100 yards, 110 yards on the back stretch, that's kind of marked to some degree. But you reduce that footprint. That's also why talking about redoing the track up at Riley is important also.
Yeah.
So that we have multiple sites for that. And the more we can keep our high school kids on campus, that's why, quite frankly, the ECC to CTE is attractive, because yes, they're not on campus, but they're crossing as opposed to driving down Fort Sheldon, as you saw with the accident that took place a couple weeks ago in Fort Sheldon and 77. So that we've looked at many different designs. We've gone back and forth on what the design would look like. We'd like to put some locker rooms within the facility. We can help change the facade, as opposed to, instead of a big wall with kind of a cover, you can tier it with locker rooms and even some type of community rooms that can be used, maybe rented out and used, access from the parking lot there, so you could have it could be used, maybe if it's community use if you want, without having access to the entire high school, but it's connected to the high school, because then we can utilize the elevator in the current facility. But there is some connection between the two that I think we've got to figure out.
What's the Lake A's experience with installing, I think we talked about this before, but not installing, upgrading school facilities with PC? They're
With
well
A's?
experienced in that?
Yeah, they just did all of, just got done with Granville. than that, they've done many districts just retrofitting. They've got a good team, I think it's also GMB, they're designed from a architectural standpoint of what our buildings can handle on capacity.
I think they learned a lot from those other projects that sharpen our pricing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, our price was substantially different when we first did it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, wow.
I recall.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you explain to me real fast the sequencing between Jamestown Upper and Lower, like what that might look like?
So the idea would be if we were to take, if we were to try to get earlier into a 5-6 model
Yeah.
from a district organizational standpoint. So then we would have all K-4 buildings, 2 5-6 buildings, and then 2 7-8 buildings in high school.
Right.
We would take, James, in the short term, unless, that goes back to really, Dr. Hooper's question about how long is this gonna take? We might do this later in the game, because if all of a sudden, let's say next year, we're like, wow, enrollment's starting to look different, and we're like, let's hold off on doing anything for a couple of years, and if it keeps going, then it turns into, let's not do anything with Jamestown Upper, let's put that building in, we have the land there, let's put the building in, we have time to wait to make that decision. If it's like, you know what, the enrollment isn't changing, but we wanna change the structure of the district to be for consistency and purposes, we would then take Jamestown Lower, or Jamestown Upper, make it a 5-6 building, we'd have to do some structural changes from, the gym, no.
The office.
The office areas, cause the support staff, there's a little bit of, there's some classrooms, we'd have
Specials.
some special stuff, we'd have to change for music, actually music is the main one. And we'd do that, and then we'd have to have classrooms sent to Jamestown Lower, so there's capacity for a K-4 building without having to
All
repeat districts.
Jamestown kids.
There might be, there might be a little bit of, tweaking, if we get to that point in 3, 4, 5 years and say, okay, we might have to change up, but I think it just gives us time from an enrollment standpoint to do. And so we looked at, when we first looked at initial ideas,